Hey everybody, so I had a fantastic reading month in March. Actually, I read so many good books that I cannot wait to tell you all about them. And let me tell you, I always say this, get ready for that TBR to explode, because every one of these books belongs on it. So let's get started. Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you all doing today? As always, I hope you're happy, I hope you're healthy, I hope you're safe, and of course, I hope you're reading an amazing book or two or three or four. We had a fantastic weekend here in Northern California. Sunday, I wore shorts and a tank top, if you can believe that. It did not last. The next day, it was way back down in the 60s again, and I'm back into long sleeves and jeans, but I will take that one day, let me tell you. But I have to say, I'm also reading some amazing books right now that I can't wait to tell you about. And in March, I read just so many fantastic books. So, as always, get out your pen, get out your paper, get out your Goodreads, however you keep track of your TBR. If you are so able, please order these books from your local independent bookstore. Or if you are a library user, get your copy as soon as possible. So we are going to start with a bit of nonfiction. Now, it took me a while to get to reading this book. My husband actually bought me a copy, I want to say for my birthday or for Christmas one year, and it came with a signed play and all of this kind of stuff, and I just never got around to it, and shame on me. And that is The Deviant War, The Homosexual versus the United States of America by Eric Cervini. This was shortlisted for the Pulitzer. It came out from FSG. It is also out in paperback, so you can get it both ways. And I actually listened to the audio, as I always do when I read, and it is very, very good as well. So this is the story of Frank Kameny. He was a brilliant man, and he got into college super early, and he was he went into I want to say astronomy, but that's not right. I think he was like an astrophysicist or something like that. And he worked for the American government. And he winds up losing his job because of his security clearance, because of the government finding out that he is a homosexual. This is like in 1957. Frank Kameny then spends the entire rest of his life fighting for the rights for gay men and women to have security clearance so that they can work in government jobs. Now, he gives up almost everything. He sort of lives for most of his life in poverty. Very rarely does he even have a job to support himself. He's borrowing and stuff. He is solely focused on this mission, and it takes you through the history of sort of the gay rights movement from 1957 forward, all the way through the Obama administration, actually, where Frank Kameny met Obama. He died soon thereafter. You get to meet all sorts of different people and different organizations, and you get to see how all of these pieces sort of fit together, not only within the world of sort of, queer history, but also sort of against the backdrop of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. And it is so well researched, but it's so easily readable. Frank Kameny is a fascinating man. Very complicated, and very just interesting how I am not that kind of person that could just put everything on hold for one purpose. I find that to be an amazing trait. And all of the people through history that he meets and he works with and does things with, just very fascinating. Highly recommend. I learned a ton about my own community in this book, and how gay men and women were treated, and how the government, the FBI, Hoover, all of that. It was all fascinating. Highly recommend. The Deviant War, The Homosexual versus the United States by Eric Cervini. And this is again out from FSG. It is also out in paperback and audio. So I have all of them. So I will tell you, I read the paperback because it was easier to take the paperback on the plane than it was the hardback. And then I listened to it, of course. So I don't know if I told you all, but my husband asked at the beginning of this year that he wanted to read a book of month together. So he was going to pick a book. Originally, he wanted to read the entire Interview with the Vampire series. We read the first one. He didn't love it as much as he thought he would. So he pivoted, and the next book that we read, and I read it on my Kindle, so that is this one. Hopefully that's not too glary. Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. And I apologize. Let me see if I can figure out who this is published by. I don't know if I know, and I apologize. I don't know. But what I will say is this is a horror novel, which is not usually my thing. But, you know, it is what it is. I gave it a go. But I actually kind of liked this one. So I'm trying to get back to the cover. I apologize. So I can hold it up there for you. There you go. Okay, so this has also just been made into a movie. So let me tell you what it's about. That was a lot of blah, blah, blah about nothing. So this book is about a family, a queer family. It has a little girl and her two dads have wound up at this cabin sort of in the middle of the nowhere. The young girl is out collecting grasshoppers when a man comes up, introduces himself as Leonard, and sort of says that things are going to happen. He apologizes to her. I will say, like, the first few minutes of this, like, grown man showing up and talking to this young girl was super creepy. And here's what happens. They infiltrate the house, and it's him and three other people, and they basically tell the dads that they have to make a choice. If one of them has to choose to die, the others have to choose to kill one of the three of them in order to stop the apocalypse from coming. And as you can imagine, the dads are skeptical at best, but things continue to happen and different things occur that sort of lead and give credence to what these people are saying. The book is a bit violent, I will say that. There is some definite, very, I don't want to say gory because it wasn't like overly gory, but definitely some scenes that made me cringe a little bit because I don't read this normally. Nothing totally terrible, but it was a little bit that. It's very intense. The minute my husband and I were done, we were talking about what we would do if we were in this situation and we felt that like we believed. And it's a tough choice because it's two dads and their young daughter. I think she's like 7 at the time. And this decision and how do you do it and all of the violence that goes along with it with these 4 people who have come together. They're strangers, but they all have had these visions that in order for the apocalypse to be upended, this decision has to be made. Okay. Watch the movie. And this is not a surprise to anyone, not as good as the book. So highly recommend the book instead of the movie. But I will say that the book is very short, but very intense. It was good. I really liked it. I hope that that's enough. I don't recommend horror very often on this channel. So there it is. Paul Tremblay's Cabin at the End of the World. And I apologize that I don't know who put it out because, as you know, it's on my Kindle. Okay, so the next few books that I'm going to tell you about, and I only have 4 more. It was a slow reading month, but it was a fantastic reading month. And all 4 of these are so amazing. Actually, all of these were amazing. I don't know who I'm kidding. The next book I want to tell you about is Wandering Souls by Cecile Pinn. This is out from Holt. I have to say thank you to Holt. They sent me 2 copies of the Ark, which I gave one to my friend Ryan. I read the Ark, and as soon as I was done with the Ark, this beautiful finished copy showed up. This book is long-listed for the Women's Prize for Literature. And it is fantastic. It is a short punch of a novel about 3 Vietnamese siblings, a sister and 2 brothers. They, at the very beginning of the book, they're sort of being put on a boat to get out of Vietnam right after the U.S. has left, and they're trying to emigrate to the United States where they have an uncle. But these 3 children, who are teens, are going first, and then the family is to follow. They arrive in, I think it's Hong Kong, and they get there, they're put in an encampment, and as they're waiting for their parents, they sort of start to acclimate to this lifestyle. Unfortunately, and this is not a spoiler, it's told in the blurb, the family does not make it. The family does not make it, and these 3 children are then shipped to the UK. Because of decisions made by the sister. I'll leave that to you to read the book. And it's really about them coming to terms with their sense of otherness, away from home, missing their family, and sort of how do you grow up and the roles that people are forced to take especially the oldest sister, when the family is gone and now she's in charge. And it's about, sort of creating your own life and what happens. The book goes through many decades. So it goes through them sort of coming to the UK. It comes to them getting jobs. It talks about relationships and children, all the way back to their return to Vietnam. I found it heart-rending. Heart-wrenching is the word that I wanted. Heart-wrenching. There were times when I was very teary-eyed. The prose is very simple, but quite beautiful. The characters are all well drawn. You definitely will feel frustrated for them, frustrated by them, and all of these things. And it's just amazing in such a short book that Cecile Pin was able to do so much. Highly recommend Wandering Souls, Cecile Pin, out in the United States here by Holt. I know that it's also out in the UK. It can't not be out in the UK and be nominated for the Women's Prize. You know what? I totally realized that I had said I was going to do something every month in my wrap-up, and I didn't do it this month, so sorry for that. I was going to always start with my favorite read of the month. Well, I'm here to talk about it now. And that's Brother and Sister Enter the Forest by Richard Mirabella. This is out from Catapult. Talk about a book that just puts you through the ringer. So this is the story. This is the story of a brother and a sister. At the beginning of the book, the sister is an established nurse. She's well on her own. She has sort of a boyfriend, and she's there. And her brother shows up after years of non-communication. Really, he claims that part of his house fell down. He has nowhere to go, and he moves in. We find out through flashbacks that he was in a very abusive relationship as a teenager. An act of violence occurs, and he and his boyfriend at the time flee, and that decision forever changes what happens to him. There is a lot of emotional and physical relationship violence in this book. So trigger warning for that. It's very well handled, and it is important to the overall narrative, but definitely heavy. It's about him as a gay young man coming out to his family, and not really coming out, but his family knowing, his mom sort of blaming him for his own situation. Their relationship never really recovers. And then it's about what happens when they come back together. And there's a lot of attempts to heal, attempts to move on, but things keep getting in the way, the past, the trauma. It's really well written. It's very sparse in its language, but in a lot of ways, it sort of just stays at this core of dealing with your trauma. Not only the brother who has left and come back, but also the sister and sort of the loss of part of her family and sort of how that's affected her relationships moving forward in life. They make the book definitely goes all over the place that I did not expect it to go. I loved every page of it. I thought it was excellent. Highly recommend Brother and Sister Enter the Forest by Richard Mirabella, and this is out from Catapult. And I'm sad. I asked Richard on Twitter if he was going to come to the Bay Area, and he's not going to be able to. And I understand, but I'm just sad because I would have loved to have met him and talked to him about his book. Okay, so we're going to take a wide left turn and do a completely different type of book, and that is Wayward by Emily Hart. This is out from St. Martin's Press. This is a book I actually tried to get a copy of before it came out, and I didn't, which is absolutely fine. So I, of course, went out and bought it immediately because I was so excited about it. I love books about the family saga of witches. I just love it. That's this type of book. So we have 3 different generations of women. So we have 1619, we have sort of the great-great-great-great-grandmother who is charged with witchcraft and put on trial because one of her neighbor's husband was trampled by cows, and sort of this very long loop of how she was supposedly responsible for that. She's like the local herbalist, medicine woman. She helps with people's illnesses, and so she is definitely dealing with that. Then we have in the 1940s, World War II is going on. We have Violet. Violet is an independent young woman who wants to sort of go outside what the station of her life will allow her. She's from a wealthy family. It's sort of expected that she'll grow up, she'll get married. She winds up having a cousin come, and events occur, and she winds up having to make choices with her and her brother. And then the third member of the family is Kate. She's in 2019. She's in a very abusive relationship. You find that out very early on. And she decides to flee. And she flees to a house owned by her great aunt Violet. And she gets there and she starts to learn about her past. Now, all of these women sort of have this touch with nature. So there's like a bit of magic in it, but it's really about three independent women doing for themselves what they need to do and how they deal with society and family and things that are thrown at them and how they sort of survive all of that. I loved it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I loved the history. I loved the interconnectedness. I loved all three women's stories. They were all compelling in their own way. You know, I don't love things about World War II, but it didn't mind. I loved Violet very, very much. And when you find out sort of what she does later, it is so well done. Yeah, and this cover is just freaking gorgeous. I really like this, and I don't know that enough people are talking about it. So Wayward by Emilia Hart. Did I say Emily? I apologize, Emilia. I totally butchered your name. Trying to see there, but in my camera, I am trying to read backwards, and I'm not good at it. Wayward, awesome. I will tell you, so I bought this book at a Barnes & Noble in Sacramento, California, where I go for work often, and there's really just this one bookstore near where I work. And so I go to this Barnes & Noble. I don't know about you. Normally when I talk to the people at Barnes & Noble, they do not tell me about books that they've read. It's usually very transactional. But the young woman, when I picked up this book and I brought it to the front, said that she read the arc and it made her cry and that she's been thinking about it ever since. So I didn't get her name. She had lovely red hair and she totally sold me on it. And it made me so happy to be in Barnes & Noble, supporting them and supporting her in her reading. So Wayward, Emilia Hart, St. Martin's Press, highly recommend. Okay, last but not least is a big book of the year, and that's I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai. This is out from Viking here in the United States. The follow-up to The Great Believers, Pulitzer Prize finalist, book that was everywhere, well-deserved, absolutely loved, completely different in all the right ways. I think I own every Rebecca Makkai novel. They're all up here above me where you can't see them. I keep all of my favorite authors in one section. So I own everything. And that's what I love about Rebecca. She is different in every single way. This is a sort of like a murder mystery. Our main character has returned to the school, the boarding school where she went to teach podcasting. She's a famous podcaster. And when she was, I think, a junior or a senior, a young woman in her class was murdered. And a man who worked in sort of the exercise or sort of gym facilities was charged with her murder. Really, you find out very quickly based on circumstantial evidence. And she comes to the school to do this podcast thing, and one of the young women has decided that she wants to do a podcast on this murder and the investigation into it. And sort of how everything goes along is we dive back into the past, so we learn about that. Our main character meets people that are now adults that were children, and as she starts to piece everything together, the book just becomes more and more complicated, and it's fantastic. It sort of is like this big puzzle. And what's really interesting is she's writing to someone. You can tell she's writing to someone very early on in the book. Sort of she's telling this story to him. And when you figure it out, it's just so good that how it all goes together. Now, there is a secondary line of secondary plot regarding her husband. Her and her husband are sort of separated. They live in houses next door. They're very interchanged in their lives. But he gets accused of sexual misconduct many years ago, but sexual misconduct that comes to the forefront, and it causes other havoc in our main character's life. And so I didn't know, that didn't all work for me 100% with the overall narrative of the book. It just sort of made her life more complicated as she was diving into something that a lot of people thought was closed, but as pieces come together. The book then goes forward to something, I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to spoil it, but we get to see this investigation in its entirety. And I will say it has quite a twist at the ending. There is a reservedness to this book. Like, you are slightly distanced from the character, but I think that has to do with sort of the analytical mind of a podcaster, and so how she's always looking at the pieces as she puts them together. I really liked it. I turned the pages. I thought it was. I also listened to this on audio from Libroform. I always say that name wrong, but thank you very, very much to them for keeping me company while I read. And I absolutely thought it was fantastic. And when I finished it, I was like, wow, I didn't see that, but I did see that. Oh my gosh, why did I miss that? It's that good. That's I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai, out from Viking. Highly recommend. Okay, so it's a short stack of books. Hopefully I did a nice job. One of these books is going to be my Kindle, so just deal with that, okay? So there you go. And hopefully I encouraged you to buy or read or check out, or however you do that, all of these books, because I will tell you they were all very, very good and worth your time. As always, if you are a return subscriber, I could not do this without you. Thank you for the few new subscribers I've gotten. I finally have broken the 12,700 mark. Or 670 mark, almost a 700. I'm still doing that. If you are a new subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. You'll only help me get to 13,000 faster. As always, I encourage you to shop locally, read globally, and until next time, I wish you happy reading. Bye, everybody.